just talking about was that shift between zero and first, and kind of relating that to sitting down and standing up or riding a bike. Just kind of where you're orienting from. If you have other examples of how that might show up. So you're talking about like with a martial artist being kind of like heavy footed, or just like if there's other examples of, because it feels like such a foundational issue that is probably super common to some degree. And you mentioned like flat-footedness or weak feet, or someone who's experiencing that. Other ways people might experience it to kind of point to like, this is the issue that you're talking about. So kind of other things that people maybe, or another context for it, other things people show up to talk to you about or show up to work with you on. And it kind of comes back to this disconnect.
We haven't really gone into it that much, but this idea of a developmental spectrum in each chakra, in the same way that an electromagnetic field forms, right? Initially, you just have this receiver, and it's just taking in information, but there's no field yet. But as the field forms more and more, at a certain point, there starts to be a differentiation between the field and then out beyond the field, which in each chakra, at that point, a person's mind starts to experience separateness on a level that previously they were undifferentiated from. So at the zero chakra, if you're undifferentiated, there's just kind of this, it's analogous to if you're riding something, riding a bike, riding a horse, if you're on a bumpy ride in a vehicle, if you're able to just roll with it, right? You do this certain kind of merge with the horse or the bike or the whatever. There's no resistance. The interface between you and that thing is in more of a merge. And so you don't get jostled around as much. You know, you're not in this like resistance to it. It's not a battle, right? For example, if you're holding your coffee mug and trying to not spill your coffee mug, right, in the car. Well, in order to not spill the coffee mug, you got to try to like roll with it and let your body move so that the coffee mug doesn't get jerked around, right? So that kind of relational dynamic, which is different than, let's say, you're going to hold firm, and there is a reason to be in a kind of a battle with, or the interface is going to be one that's going to be more controlling or more combative or more dissonant, right? We don't realize it, but we can do that at our zero chakra and via our feet. And we can be in this rigid orientation. And people who are in more of a rigid orientation, they're going to get shin splints. They're going to have hammer toes. They're going to get plantar fasciitis. They're going to be more likely to twist their ankle or sprain their ankle. They're going to rupture their Achilles tendon. They're going to have more calf strains. Whereas the person that's too loose, again, they're not going to have as much pop, right? They're not going to be as quick. They're not going to, their arches are going to be flatter because they're more in this mergy state. And if it goes far enough in that direction, it's in a collapse, right? As far as the psyche and the process of individuation, that person is going to feel more, they're going to just kind of be able to roll more with the weather, for example, because their system just kind of rolls with it. A person that's too far in that direction is going to tend to be a hoarder. They're going to feel safely embedded in they're going to be less individuated at that level, which means they're going to feel more safely embedded in that environment. But they're also going to track that environment, meaning when things don't seem all good in that environment, their mind's going to be more sensitive to that.
Right.
They're going to notice it.
Like dependent on it.
Yeah. That's to be in that state is to be much more in the earth is my mother level of consciousness. It's that kind of thing. It's like, what is going on in your system versus what's the environment doing and what's the interface? Am I answering your question?
Definitely. I think talking about what presents in your description of like the type of orientation you may have around it, by like the loose hands versus like the rigid orientation, and then the physical consequences of that, I think is definitely what I was wondering about. And the distinction you made that it's not one or the other. Like, it's not like one is better than the other. It's like being totally oriented in one way over the other is the thing that has consequences. Is that right?
And it depends on what you're trying to do.
Right.
If you're, there's always a zone, where you can grip the golf club too tight, or you can not grip it tight enough.
Right.
And both are going to make you not hit the ball as far. You can have your feet and ankles and calves and zero chakra be too tight or too loose. They're both going to inhibit how fast you can run. There's going to be a zone where it
was also like discouraging because like you started listing off symptoms of like being too rigid, and like as someone who's like suffered shin splints and plantar fasciitis,
busted
and turf toe.
Yeah.
It was I was like, so too rigid.
So can we play with that for a minute?
Yeah, please. Any help I can get would be great.
So if you bring conscious attention to your zero chakra, what do you notice?
First is like my hamstrings.
Okay.
But I know that's first chakra. So my zero chakra?
No, it depends. It just...
Okay. But I'm trying to learn this distinction today. This is new territory for me.
Just kind of what shows up as far as mood or, what comes to mind? I
mean, there's a charge there. Just if I try to bring awareness.
Okay. And describe the charge. Is it anxious? Is it?
Yeah, I would say anxious. I mean, it's a coil. It's like a wound up spring.
Okay. There's like a tension.
Yeah.
Okay. Just consciously intend to ease up on that tension. And then what happens?
It's like a shot of energy, like through like other parts of my body.
Yep. So the energy is being held at zero by that tension, and when you ease up, then it wants to go from zero up into 1, 2, 3, 4, etc.
Yeah.
So just notice that okay, but you can titrate that,
right?
Because you feel how it feels to me like your breathing is changing. Feels like you're starting to there's right up in the chest area is kind of the next place that you'll tend to grab and say, okay, the charge. You'll try to stop the charge there.
Yeah.
Does that feel accurate?
Yeah, like chest and shoulders.
Yeah.
Like,
and then notice just ease up on the tension there, and then it'll hit your mind.
Yeah, but then it's black.
Yeah.
It's like instantaneous.
Right. Jeff, meet the primordial ground. Jeff's mind. Meet
Good narration.
We're joking, but it's like serious, right? It's like, holy shit.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's like you just, it's analogous to like looking down and realizing, oh my God, I'm standing over an abyss.
Yeah, it is. It's like that. That's a good description.
And so it's like, I think I better maintain that tension in my zero chakra, right?
Right.
Notice that, okay, and that's good. That's better than not having enough tension there. Because then your mind will get flooded.
Right.
And then there's several things. It's like, well, you could make your zero chakra more conscious, right? You could more consciously embody the tension there. Yep. So you feel like you're doing that right now?
Yeah.
And then do you feel how your subtle field is more...
It expands.
You're way more expansive, and you're presencing yourself in that room in your zero chakra way more than you were 30 seconds ago.
Yeah, it's like levitating. It's bizarre. Just like there's a feeling in my feet that like it's that expansiveness, because it's like feels like it's emanating from the physical body.
Right.
It feels like there's space between my feet and the floor that wasn't there.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a there's an energetic interface that's like creating a vibratory experience that is it reminds me of you see in cartoons where the person like is tiptoeing or something, and they just sort of like glide across the floor, the Flintstones or something,
Oh, like little Fred's like twinkle toes.
Yes, exactly.
Like yeah. When he's bowling.
Right, exactly. Okay, that's your zero chakra. And again, it's not just about your feet. You feel how it's a field.
Yeah, totally.
And then it's okay. In addition to that, not instead of, include your first chakra. And let some of that energy from zero come up into first and consciously presence in your first. And notice that there's a relationship between the two. Again, kind of like sitting on a bike, but your butt's on the seat, but your feet are on the pedals, right? And you're doing both. You're putting weight into the pedal, but you're also putting weight into the seat, right? Your first chakra is doing its thing. Your zero chakra is doing its thing. And there's an interaction. They're communicating with each other.
Right.
And notice your throat just started to let go. So your voice sounded different when you said right. You hear that?
Yeah.
Dropped an octave.
Yeah, yep.
You're like talking from your balls more.
Right. That's at least an octave. I mean, I'm not that tall, but that's at least an octave down.
But you feel how, you feel different to me again. Now your first chakra seems more present.
Yeah.
You seem more physically present in that room, meaning where you are.
Yeah, it feels less isolated than it did. I don't know if I would have described it that way, but how I was unconsciously sitting here before, but.
And can you tell that there's huge effects of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Not just physically, not just emotionally, mentally, but even like on a cellular level, can you tell that it's healthier for your cells
That's an interesting way to put it. But yeah, there's you feel like a different person.
Mm-hmm.
I think is how I would say what you're saying. Like there's a made up differently in this state than the than not being connected to both of those things.
Yeah. And then you feel how then your ego mind is trying to figure out how to integrate that. Like, wait, am I being too big? Am I being too powerful? Is this arrogant? Am I going to get in trouble for this? Meaning whatever conflict there might be about it. And or the ego's like, wait, how can I use this to...
Right. I mean, there's both going on, right? It's like initial trepidation, and then it's like, this is who I always was.
Right.
It's that going on. Because it's still first, right? So there's still some over and against going on. We'll see who's sadistic now, Lance. That was a wild shift. It hasn't it was like quick. I think you're becoming more efficient, Lance. I'm curious about that. Like, do you feel I know you don't describe it this way, and I wouldn't either. That you're not seeking a particular type of change in the moment for someone. That consciousness is kind of guiding the process. You're not trying to... you described it recently, and I liked how you did. I'm trying to remember how you said it, but I think it was in the context of like these sometimes like deeper imaginal issues. You're not trying to like push someone in that direction. It just goes there sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think the bigger question I'm wondering is like, do you see those kinds of things happening faster than they used to, or sooner, or more quickly, or?
I do. I mean, over time I get more potent.
Right.
And so in simple terms, the more consciousness that's there, then the more there's that acts as a catalyst for change. And I have ideas about the change and about how it tends to go, or how I think it probably should go, or what the general process is. But I'm very aware that I'm providing the consciousness, and then I'm watching the change.
Right.
Versus trying to make a certain change happen. Aside from, again, that's this reason for discerning. But what I will do is not just bring consciousness, but focus that consciousness as witnessing, holding, containing, mirroring.
Okay. Based on the state you see, the condition. So in the exercise we just did.
So, yeah.
Yeah. What would you say? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, just so from what I feel you doing, and I can see you in there, but again, it's not, I don't really see visually. It's more I'm feeling the energy. It's less like from looking at this video image that I see of you. But so I was going to half jokingly say, okay, I see you in this expanded zero and first chakra state, and I see your mind digging it, and then in general, it's like, all right, containment, mirroring.
I think I felt some of that.
We're creating a monster. We need to.
I'd like to think I have some amount of my own containment for that.
I don't know,
but probably not.
It wasn't looking like it.
Nice.
No, there was.
Did you feel threatened, Lance?
Yeah. Where's Sky? Is she home right now?
She's next door.
She's safe. No, yeah, I could see that you were. My sense was you were experiencing that expansion and that empowerment, and were simultaneously going into, okay, how do I organize this? How do I?
Yeah. Not for evil.
Right. What were you going to say?
Yeah, I think that's part of it too. I was wondering, like, initially when you begin that exercise, is it just witnessing and like helping that person witness it, or like what? So you answered it, but you answered for like what the latter half of it was. So what was the beginning of it?
Yeah, it always starts. I mean, I'm always going in that sequence. Okay. You know, when I said, Jeff, bring your attention to your zero chakra, I brought my conscious attention there as well, which enhanced your experience of it. Right? That's always the thing. That's why people will say, oh, I feel all this stuff when I'm at your office, and then when I leave, I can't find it, you know. But then eventually they get to where they can. But so it's that thing where I'm shining light on it, which helps you see it more. And it acts as a catalyst. My consciousness is acting as a catalyst. So you experience it more than you ordinarily would. But again, you sitting and looking at it means that, okay, when I pull my consciousness away from it, you're going to have more access to it than you did before.
Totally.
But to answer your question, yeah, I start with just witnessing it, and then it's like, all right, should I move into holding? Should I move into containment? Should I move into mirroring? And you feel how, okay, if you're in that state where your mind, you're feeling it and registering it, right? And you're in a certain state, and you're paying attention to your state, right? But now, you know, for example, if Sky walked in, Sky is Jeff's wife, by the way. I think I said that one other time.
For context.
Yes. If Sky walked in, it's like, okay, now what are you going to do? Are you going to shift out of that? Are you going to relate to her from there?
Right.
How would you relate to her from there? Would it feel like, you know, would that feel uncomfortable? Would you feel like you're being too big or too small or too, you know?
Right.
She'd be like, are you high?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, calm down a little bit. Like, just a little bit.
But right, it's like, oh my God, you know, it's one thing to be in a state yourself, but then how do you relate from a state?
Right. That's huge.
And you feel how, okay, well, with me right now, because notice I just felt you bring your attention more to me, right? You're not being such a narcissistic fuck.
Such a Lance. I just feel you being a little antagonistic at times today, and I'm just going to throw it back.
I know. See, this is the problem. When
people get better.
Right.
I help people, and then they make fun of me.
Yeah. They start to dish it back.
It's really, there's no gratification in them. Yeah.
It's kind of like being a martial arts instructor, you know, your student gets like better and better. So when you're sparring with them, it's like, good punch. You know?
Why did I teach you that? But but it was only possible because you like kind of gave me the space to just like occupy it for a while. You know, like there's the container to just experience it and then to like relate to someone else. Like it took a long time to sort it out enough that I wasn't just like riding my own high.
Yes.
You know?
Right.
Yeah.
And the way you put it sounds so weird. It's like, what? Lance gave Jeff the space to be in his own, you know, first chakra. And it's like, yes, we literally, and not because I have superpowers, it's because we need others to provide space for us to experience ourselves enough to where we finally can do it ourselves.
Yeah.
And obviously that was hugely influenced by our upbringing and what people were providing, what space, and what people were or specifically not allowing.
Right. Right.
But so I'm doing it a little different than your usual pattern, and then you're responding. And then it's like, oh, if we can get to where you actually notice it, and we're actually talking about it, it's like, oh, well, then you're really starting to, lock it in, right? You're really starting to register it in a way where you're learning it. Your mind is actually creating structures that are going, oh, okay.
Stops expecting the norm.
Yeah, right.
One more structure that's got a little more conscious attention around it.
Yeah. Like you feel how even just like the power dynamic between you and I right now, it's different.
Yeah.
Like you usually, there's a little more of an alpha beta on these chakras.
Just for the record, those terms are invented and aren't real, but it just came from studying wolves, and like people misunderstood like what alpha even meant, and then it's not a term that like I feel it anyway. I think the sadomasochistic balance you talk about is like factually accurate, and alpha beta is not. That's all I'm saying.
See, you're like challenging.
And you don't want to listen to me, but I promise I'm just trying to tell you that you were right the first time.
Now you're going to start fucking arguing with me, questioning what I say.
It took a lot, though. It took a lot for me to like say that and tell you that you're wrong. It's taken a lot for you to. Doing great, Lance. You're doing great. We don't have to put this in the podcast either. We can take this. But you're right, though. That dynamic is there. Like I noticed that.
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. I just feel you on that 0 and first level showing up more. And it's fun to do the sort of jockeying back and forth. But I can tell you what I also feel right now is like, well, if you and I were, had to fight somebody, or if you and I were going to play 2-on-2 volleyball against 2 other people, or, it'd be like, all right, Jeff's much more ready to go. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You're much more like present and in go mode, or in potentially go mode, than you were.
That's a cool way of putting it too. Yeah. I think that resonates with me. That feels like applicable,
Yeah.
Because this isn't like a foreign state to me. Like, it's not like I've never felt this before.
Yeah.
But like having the context for what it means is really helpful. And like having a way that like I got here, it's really cool. Well, it was so funny. Like I had just registered to myself how my voice had changed, and like you like said like, oh, your voice changed. So it was kind of like creepy. Like it was like as I'm saying it, it's like it goes by and like, oh, that was a different sound.
Yeah.
It was a different
a little different timbre or something.
Right. Well, it was the throat, like you said. Like it was just this whole. So like, I feel like you just said the chest thing, right?
Yeah.
Which to me like extends out to my shoulders. And when I brought awareness to that, like the whole thing sank, and like then the throat like went with it.
Suddenly sounded like Barry White.
Right. Totally. Just funny. Anytime you like experience one of these new state things too, it just makes you a little giddy anyway.
Like, right, a little mania creeps in.
Yeah, just a little bit. Just like teasing.
Again, just as far as theory stuff, that idea that, okay, primordial ground energy goes through the 0, goes through 1, ideally comes up into the genitals, up into the emotions, up into the solar plexus where it becomes mental, up into the heart, through the throat, et cetera, et cetera. And you feel how that's not just concept, like you're feeling into that right now.
Right. But again, like this structural part of like the 0 chakra idea that you're talking about just feels very important to me. And like I haven't, because otherwise it's like, well, how did this stuff get into my, halfway up my body already? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there's a disconnect there. It's just kind of cool. It feels like a more helpful framework to me.
Mm.
It's like in order for it to jump to first, you have to already be sitting in lotus position because then it's on the ground.
Yeah, right.
Moving a lot now, and I'm all like shaky.
And then do you feel how, and this is the thing I'm always doing with clients, it's like, notice that, okay, where are you anchoring in order to try to deal with this, right? Because you're orienting a little different. And so it's like, where's the anchor point, right? You can play with, maybe have the anchor point be your zero chakra.
Right. That's what I was just trying to.
And then you might be able to go into a ground state there, or at least, more of a ground state. Or you might feel like, nope, I can't quite, get stable there. But maybe in your first you can. Or if you can't, then, what about bring your attention to me and use me, which is the same thing you might do if you and I are, especially let's say if we're in the same place physically and we hear a certain noise or someone starts banging on the door, you might look at me, let's say we're at my office, right? So you'd probably look at me like, what the fuck?
Right.
And if I get, reassured you like, okay, no, it's cool. I know who that is and it's all good. It's like, all right, then you'd.
Right.
But you feel that right now that you can use me to stabilize yourself?
Totally. It's a good example.
And you're anchoring in me, which is like that bus analogy. I'm the pole. And when you grab me, if you're standing on the bus, right? If you grab me, it's like, all right, now you can let yourself get moved around by the energy, but you're not having to like feel so unstable because you're using me to anchor.
Right.
And then simultaneously, you can feel that, okay, even though you're using the pole, you're also getting better. Like it doesn't have to be 100% using the pole.
Right.
It's like just use me enough to feel stable, but then simultaneously get better at standing on your own 2 feet. And this is how we're supposed to relate developmentally. And then, of course, my job is to remain stable enough and presence myself enough and let you use me to strengthen yourself. But if I was unstable or disappeared on you or attacked you or whatever, well, then that's going to fuck with your process, right?
Right.
And so if I'm your parent and I'm doing that too much, well, it's going to really mess with your development, which is why it's like, what's the best thing you can do for your kid? It's to be a strong, stable presence for your kid to key off of. So modeling is really important, I mean, it's not just modeling, but I'm saying that, that idea of instead of me trying to get you to do it better,
right?
But if I'm not doing it, if I'm not stable, if I'm not present, if I'm not organized, it's like, well, how the hell are you going to get organized?
Right.
And a parent that's anchoring in their kid is not helping their kid, right? The parent needs to energetically say, here, anchor in me.
Just interesting because you can feel that pattern of wanting to anchor in your mind.
Yeah.
Or wanting to like tamp down and like mentally wrangle these things. And it's like, I know that doesn't work. So I let it move. But then like you're saying, then it's like, it's so tempestuous that the swirl of energy is like, it's like I'm being tossed about in the wind.
Yeah.
And then I like the idea of like trying different anchors out and like trying, it's like, well, what about zero? Like zero doesn't have any expectations of understanding this. Like, what if you just like hang out? It's like, nope, I'm still too top heavy with what's going on. And like moving up and like, it's not enough. And then like you said, that reaching out and anchoring in someone else gave the breathing room to let that settle in. It's just pretty remarkable. If you want to learn more about the Dimension Approach, please visit dimensionapproach.com.